and welcome to the 10th instalment of this exciting series of shows sponsored by Dublin City Comics and Collectibles, where we, the full force, take an in-depth look at the old Action Force comics in no particular order. For the next 5 episodes, we will be taking you through the Action Force mini-comics, starting with number 1, of course. I am Chris, Montezuma's Revenge McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me on this new episode, as always, is Brian, Baron Ironblood'S Revenge Hickey. So let's get on with it, shall we? Mini explosion.
In this episode of Disorder of Battle, we look at the mini in stature but mighty in nature mini comics, beginning with issue number 1, Ironblood'S Revenge. Originally published in the free mini-comic number 1, issued with Battle number 428 in July 1983.
Credits include writer, uncredited, artist, uncredited, but most likely is Robert Turner, letterers, uncredited, and colours, uncredited.
That was
easy.
So I would say that I predict Jerry Day is the writer, because this continues on nicely from the very first Action Force story, which we covered in our last Disorder of Battle.
Highly likely, yes.
The cast includes Baron Ironblood, the Black Major, Red Shadow Space Troopers,
SAS Force, Z Force, Q Force, Space Force Commander Chuck Connors, codename Sky Raider, Space Pilot Yuri Ivanovich Asimov, codename Hotjets, Space Security Trooper Lars Elsund, codename Hawkwind, and miscellaneous Space Force crew.
Shadow Track, Red Shadow's 747, Z Force Battle Tank, Q Force Stingray Attack Boat, Q Force Swordfish, Space Force Space Station, and Space Force Cosmic Cruiser.
Story synopsis. At a secret underground base in the high Andes disguised as an abandoned mountain village, Baron Ironblood addresses his new recruits after his defeat at Ascendancy Island. That's easy to say. At Ascendancy Island. Before giving the details of his new plan, he reflects on his previous encounters with Action Force and defeats he suffered at the hands of all 4 factions of the International Counter-Terrorist Force, which felt like it the same battle, but he just wanted to separate them all. Do you remember the time that SAS fought? Yeah, it was the same battle, Baron. It was the same battle as the SAS... Anyway, carry on.
While recounting the role Space Force played in the battle for Ascendancy Island...
You can say it easier.
The Baron introduces his new plan by telling us that Space Force will be his first target. His scheme is to target Action Force's top secret communications network and break their codes.
Awesome.
Actually, the codes is a nice thing that they brought in there. That was, I don't know if you remember, but if, like me, you remember at the fan club, you got a little code breaker. And in each issue of Battle Action Force, there'd be a coded message for fan club fans or fan club members that you could crack that code with your code breaker. So it's nice that they kind of bring that little toy or kind of feature for the fans into the story here.
Totally. And obviously, kind of using it in the story itself is kind of like, oh, cool, they're breaking codes and we can break codes too. So it's like really appealing to that kind of kid's nature. Really cool. I did find it funny that he is in the story recounting all of these battles and it's all from the same battle. It's just all the ways in which the different forces of Action Force him over.
He's really like, he's a glass half empty, the Baron guy, for sure,
Totally.
So I mean, we get this nice intro, for people who aren't familiar perhaps with Action Force, given that this was still very early in their introduction in terms of comics. We get an introduction to the 4 factions here, and I do need to comment on Rob Turner's penchant for illustrating vehicles far larger in scale than the toy actually was. So you get to see his brilliant illustration of I think it's the sea lion or the swordfish. And it looks amazing, but the crew are tiny.
Even the sea skimmer's massive as well. Like he just loves making huge vehicles. It would have been cool if they were that big.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, because they look even better than the toys.
Totally. I love that multicoloured computer screen that the Red Shadows are sitting in front of. It's like every screen is a different colour. It's so bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
That actually is superb. I love that.
But yeah, I mean, obviously these comics do continue on from that Ascendancy Island issue of Action Force that kind of set the scene, and you can kind of understand why they're doing this, because effectively they're thinking that maybe not every kid saw that particular story in battle, and now that they're kind of doing, well, let's do some mini comics just to kind of, that actually came with battle itself.
That's right, yeah. So they would have come kind of packaged up with the comic.
Yeah.
And they all piggyback off the Battle for Ascendancy Island story that had been shown maybe the previous month.
Yeah. Also interesting to note that they've gone from showing the Baron's face every 5 seconds in that story. Now we're in the mini comics, the helmet's on and it stays on.
Yes. And I don't think we ever, or it's very rare that we get to see him again without the helmet off.
You could argue that codename Sky Raider is him unmasked.
Vegan, yes.
Yeah. But that's, again, probably not. Could be, just all speculation. In any case, the story cuts to Space Force in their space station high above Earth's atmosphere. Chuck Connors and some unnamed members of his crew are discussing how quiet things are now that the Mad Baron has been dealt with. Action Force believe that Ironblood was killed while attempting to escape from Ascendancy Island the previous month. Connors notes that they had learned a few lessons from that last encounter, like adding laser shielding to their space station. As they chat, Connors, aka Sky Raider, comments that their supply shuttle is overdue.
The space station design is obviously they've upgraded their shielding.
Well, yeah, because last time
completely different space station.
It's like an open garage last time, wasn't it?
They've encased the whole dome and added some extra kind of platforms and weapon systems on it by the looks of it.
That's interesting. It's almost like they realised how funny that space station looked, even though they were basing it off that toy initially. It is like kind of almost a, well, how do we explain that the space station has changed almost, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a throwaway remark, but they get a much more plausible looking space station now on this one.
This also looks pretty cool as well. I like it.
It's well cool. I did have a look at codename Sky Raider, because there's a reference to a space station and that, and I wanted to see, because it's illustrated, they're both illustrated by Rob Turner.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if it was the same, but it's not an Action Force space station.
It's an international space station, isn't it?
It's an international one, yes. So they are different.
Cool.
The other Space Force members that we see chatting to Connors, they're not named.
Yeah.
But I think we could presume that it's Hot Jets and Hawkwind, because they're identified a little bit later on in the story.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, totally.
At that moment, the supply shuttle comes into orbit around the space station. Space Force presume it was delayed due to weather conditions on Earth, and Connors gives the order to prepare the airlock.
That's safe. We'll just assume, because obviously nothing ever goes wrong in space. As the airlock opens, it's not a supply crew that emerges, but scores of red shadows. Space Force are caught completely unawares as the Baron's fanatics rampage across all decks of the space station, while the Space Force have their trousers down. I just added that last bit. They're not really. They have their pants on.
Not for long though. Outside in open space, Red Shadow's space troopers with jetpacks and lasers open fire on the cosmic cruisers patrolling around the space station.
This is cool.
I just love the thoughts of kind of Red Shadow space troopers. Now, we don't get to see a lot of detail in this particular design. I mean, they're very simply illustrated, but still, though, they would have made an amazing toy had they been further developed.
I think they almost just draw a red shadow in the comic, but there's almost like a slight difference in the helmet almost, but you can still see where like the nose would kind of poke out, or the chinless element and so on and so forth. So I wonder if they're just drawing red shadows in space as opposed to a really cool redesign where they could have maybe bulked up their gear a bit, given them a different helmet. I think that would have been really awesome, and again would have opened up options for getting red shadows in space.
Rage and Spoon has done a really nice and unique Red Shadow helmet design or head design, which could lend itself to a kind of a bulked up space trooper type character.
Yeah, totally. I think like obviously the Red Wolf, if they'd have drawn loads of Red Wolves in there, that would have Red Wolves would have kind of been kind of cool. Because I mean, that's what he is effectively, is a bulked up red shadow in order to deal with space. So yeah, that would be cool. Or change the color so it would be red where the black is and black where the red is and so on, just to kind of differentiate them. But anything like that would have been cool. Effectively, we just get red shadows in space here, don't we?
That's it. There's not a lot of. I mean, it's just a single panel They're pretty blurred looking, it's a fairly simple kind of sketch, but still, I can dream.
Caught completely off guard, Space Force members are unable to offer any real resistance against the wave of red death that spreads throughout the station. We see Connors hurl a helmet at an approaching red shadow as he gives the order to get to the armory, like Arnie. Get to the armory! However, both Connors and Yuri Ivanovich, aka Hot Jets, are overpowered and knocked unconscious.
So I guess we know that it's Hot Jets, even though he's not named. We know from his accent in the speech bubbles. The Shadows, so they could have just killed them, but it doesn't appear to be any reason for them to be kept alive, other than that perhaps the Baron could kind of gloat at them for a bit.
Yeah, they could. I mean, that's always the case in these comics, though, isn't it? You're always in that suspension of disbelief where it's like, well, you can't just kill the heroes necessarily, otherwise, the bad guys win. So it has to be something like, oh, we'll take them prisoner, or we just keep them alive for a bit longer for gloating purposes. And I suppose that is the classic 80s kind of thing, isn't it? So, well, we need to have the bad guy and the good guy talking to each other, and they need to divulge their entire plan and so on and so forth first.
The classics 80s plot device, monologuing to just push the story on.
Massive tropes.
Later, Connors awakes to find himself and 2 other Space Force members hanging suspended in a gravity chamber. Inside the chamber, the Baron is projected onto a giant video screen. He informs Connors of the fate that awaits him, a spacewalk without a spacesuit. After he's witnessed the Baron's vengeance on the Earth below, Space Force are surprised to discover the Baron is still alive, and even more surprised that he knows their true identities. Ironblood reveals that this is another part of his plan to crack Action Force codes by hacking into their computers.
A computer screen flashes up the identity of SAS Force squad leader Rob Buckingham and also his current location, Malaysia. The Baron notes that Buckingham was the one who did so much damage behind our lines.
The Baron addresses an image of the Black Major being broadcast onto another large screen. Behind him we see a team of Red Shadows boarding a 747 with the Red Shadow markings. The Black Major reports that he and his hand-picked team will be in Malaysia within 10 hours. On the other screen beside Ironblood, data appears that reveals that SAS Force will use their boat patrol by night through the swamp region. The issue ends with the Baron delighting at the fact that SAS Force will sail right into the jaws of the Black Major's trap.
Amazing. That is a beautiful plane, isn't it?
That is an absolute cracker. I would love to be in Dublin Airport, heading off on my holidays.
The bright
see
red.
That. To see that parked outside my gate.
Wow. I want to buy a 747 now just to paint it like that. Is that bonkers?
Do you know what? I think we should do that. When we've made our millions,
yeah,
it's exactly, just for the hell of it, we're going to have a Red Shadows branded 747 that will just transport the full force crew all over the world.
Amazing. Yeah. And again, like you're getting, I love the fact that obviously this is something else that appears in these little mini comics, which we haven't mentioned yet, the kind of little bios.
Yes. Baron Ironblood gets his bio in number 1.
Yes,
and we
right.
get a little bit about Action Force, kind of an overview of Action Force.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. We get the Baron Ironblood in that one, and then I think it's in the next one that we cover where we get even more little bios and stuff. But yeah, so yeah, we're told all about Action Force, which is an interesting little kind of thing. And again, like this is them almost thinking, well, just in case people haven't read that first story, this is where we can start, developing for the kids in their heads who these characters are, what this team is, what this comic is all about.
They just very, I was going to say subtly, but maybe not so subtly, really introduce you to Action Force, but with a big focus on the bad guys in this first issue.
Yeah, totally. And again, there's obviously a lot of it is carryover from Ascendancy Island, and that's what it is. It's Baron Ironblood's revenge. Having not read that first story, you don't need to. That's the other beauty part of it. You can kind of come in here and you go, okay, so obviously this is what happened previously, and this is a long-running battle between the two guys, and then you get this little battle in space, which is short, again, quite sweet, and then it leads into the next issue, which we'll be covering on the next episode of Disorder of Battle. And we'll be doing all of the little mini comics, of course, and these kind of, I suppose, little mini episodes, which is what they turn out to be, which is nice.
Yeah. before we wrap this one up, nice little cross-sell for the boat patrol, although we don't get to see it in this issue. The Baron gives it a very nice mention. And of course, we get the little setup for the next issue that we know it's going to be the hunt for Eagle or Rob Buckingham in at the Malaysian jungles. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, the boat patrol thing, it's a nice touch because obviously it's saying it by name. And I imagine as well, I know the toys would have been out on the shelves by this point. So it's kind of like saying, oh, the boat patrol gets a mention. I've got that. Cool. So, yeah.
And of course, the Baron does a nice job of setting up Disorder of Battle number 11 by introducing the Jungle Ambush story. So thank you very much, Baron Ironblood, or Vegan, or whatever your name is.
Brian Ironblood or Baron Brian Blood. Whichever one you prefer, that's what you'll be called. But yeah, thank you, Brian, for jumping on and doing a quick issue 1 mini comic, Disorder of Battle.
Yay.
I didn't know you were the Fonz. That's it for this rather mini instalment of Disorder of Battle. Thank you to my co-host Brian Hickey and to our sponsors Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. See you next time, and as always, full force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter at The Full Force, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. Located at 46 Bolton Street, Inns Quay, Dublin 1, Ireland, you can visit their website at dublincitycomics.ie and on Facebook at facebook.com/Dublin City Comics.